Today's recipe is fresh scones with raspberry jam. Now everybody should be able to make a beautiful, buttery, light, delicious scone. Now if you follow this recipe, you'll be able to bash them out in your kitchen, no problem. First thing you need to do is weigh out 500 grams of self-raising flour. Now I'm using my Touchless TARE Taylor scales, absolutely fantastic. And then 125 grams of butter, and then just using your fingertips, just rub the butter into the flour until you end up with a kind of crumble texture, okay? Add in a touch of baking powder and then add in your sugar. This will just sweeten it up. Now, if you were making cheese scones, you would obviously take out the sugar, but the flour and the butter ratio is exactly the same. Just whip the sugar out, add some salt and pepper instead. So, back to our scones. We're gonna make vanilla scones today. So in with 1 egg, in with some vanilla extract, then add in your milk and start to mix the scones together really gently, okay? I'm using my Colourworks spoon because it's got that rubber edge to it, it allows me to work round the bowl and just carefully bring it all together. Now the secret to a good scone, in my opinion, is not over mixing and don't use a rolling pin. So once you've got that sort of soft dough, turn it straight out onto a worktop, dust with a little flour, and then compact the dough from the top and the sides. So what you're effectively doing is pushing down and in, and this will compact the dough and get it ready rather than rolling it and making it quite tough. The baking powder is reacting in the self-raising flour now, so what you don't want to do is sort of just bash it out. So compact the dough, and then using a cutter, just simply get as many cuts out of that first press as you can possibly manage. Transfer them onto a non-stick baking tray. I'm using my MasterClass vertical storage baking tray. Now this vertical storage range is great because you can pop it in the cupboard and it's not the tray you want right at the bottom like it is normally, because they're all stacked vertically. You can just grab it straight away. So straight onto there, I'm going to brush them with a little bit of beaten egg and sprinkle with a tiny bit of golden caster sugar, and then into the oven, preheated, 190 degrees. These will probably take 12 to 15 minutes max. So to make my jam, I'm using raspberries today. They are frozen. Frozen raspberries are great because they're picked when they're ripe and they're lovely and sweet, okay? And raspberries are, you usually get them sort of June time when they're there, and you can go pick your own or anything like that. Fantastic. Great way to capture British summertime flavors and preserve it into a jar. So I'm using my homemade preserving jars. This recipe of 800 grams of frozen raspberries to 1 kilo of preserving sugar will make 2 750ml jars of our homemade preserving jars full of amazing raspberry jam. So weigh out 800 grams of raspberries straight onto your scales and then zero that. I use my Touchless TARE scales, so it's dead easy. And then 1 kilo of preserving sugar. Now preserving sugar has pectin in it, which helps with the set, particularly on a raspberry jam. So look out for it. It's a slightly different packaging in the supermarket, but there's tons of it out there. Pour both of those into a nice big pan with a good surface area. The worst thing you could do is put it into a small, tall pan because the heat is at the bottom. You want to spread it all out. So I'm using my shallow, non-stick MasterClass cast aluminium pan, good surface area, medium heat, and start to warm that jam through. I'm adding in a lime cut in half because it just gives that little bit of acidity and balance with the sugar. A couple of sprigs of mint because that will just give a nice sort of underlying fragrance to it. So as it warms, the raspberries will melt, start to stir, get the sugar incorporated with the raspberries, then turn the temperature up and bring it up to boil, okay? As the jam is boiling away, you'll sort of start to see like a foam come to the surface and go to the sides. Just carefully skim that off. Now I'm using my Taylor temperature probe precision. Jam is so important that you get the right temperature, and there's no good guessing because it won't work. What you need to do is get yourself a thermometer. So I'm using my Taylor one straight in, 105 degrees. You could probably let it go up to 110, that's okay, but nothing less. Turn off the heat, let it cool, okay? And then carefully transfer it into your homemade preserving jars. Once you've got your jars full, clamp the lid down, and then if you are not sterilising them, keep them in the fridge. If you have sterilised them, then they'll be fine in the cupboard. Once your scones are out of the oven, just let them cool for 5 or 10 minutes if you can. If not, cut them open, spread them with butter, dollop of fresh, lovely raspberry jam, and you are good to go. Now, if you want the recipe, go to kitchencraft.co.uk. You will find it there, along with lots of other recipes and links to the equipment that I use in my kitchen.